Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Last time I gave introduction of this book, Bangladesh, A Legacy of Blood, written by Anthony Mascarenhas. This time, as I said earlier in my video, that I will talk in detail about this book. So since it cannot be covered in one video, that would be too long, so I would discuss this book in 2 or 3 videos. In the previous video, I have already given a detailed introduction about the author and the book. So I would directly go to the contents of the book. In this book, initially in the start, author talks about Sheikh Mujib, that during the liberation war of Bangladesh or during the military operations conducted in East Pakistan, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was in the custody of Pakistan army. And then he was given the death sentence by a military court in Pakistan. After the fall of Dhaka, and when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto take charge of the country, he refused to revalidate the death sentence of Sheikh Mujib, which was earlier given by a military court, and instead he released Sheikh Mujib and allow him to go back to East Pakistan, which was now Bangladesh. And author mentions about that's how he went back and he took charge. After that, author also talks about Sheikh Mujib's nightmare of a strong military. He talks about Sheikh Mujib's idea of not having a strong army. And in his own words, he doesn't want another monster like the one he had in Pakistan. So in short, Sheikh Mujib was never in favor of a strong army because he could foresee that how it can be harmful for the political institutions of the country, for the democracy of the country, or for himself, Sheikh Mujib, because he had already experienced the role of military in the politics while he was in the national politics of Pakistan. So meanwhile, another incident happened, that the Arab-Israel war was going on, and many countries were already in the form of blocs. Some of them were supporting the Arab countries while others were supporting Israel. Now, the situation for Bangladesh was that, being a Muslim country, or maybe they have some other motives as well, they wanted to help the Arab countries, and especially the Egypt. But since it was a newly created state and they did not have much things by which they can help Egypt or the other Arab countries, the only thing they could provide that time was tea. So Bangladesh, they provided tea to the Egypt, which could have been used for their soldiers. Then later, after the end of Arab-Israel war, now it was the time to pay back for the Arabs, or especially for the Egypt, to whom Bangladesh government provided tea. Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, he showed his willingness to provide 30 T-54 tanks to Bangladesh. Maybe in his mind that Bangladesh is a newly created state and they may not have a good defense system, so they try to help them by giving them 30 T-54 tanks to the Bangladesh army. At this point, according to author, Sheikh Mujib was alarmed at the prospects of having this military equipment, the T-54 tanks. This doesn't fit Sheikh Mujib's idea of army. As I said earlier, he didn't want a stronger army. So according to Sheikh Mujib, it was unnecessary for the Bangladesh army to have those 30 tanks. But then there were also people who opposed this idea of Sheikh Mujib, and they were very keen and interested to receive this gift from Egypt. It was also said by Bangladesh army that Bangladesh government should not refuse this offer of Anwar Sadat. Anyway, they accepted the offer and they received 30 T-54 tanks. And the receiving officer was Major Farooq. Major Farooq belonged to the 1st Bengal Lancers Regiment, and he is the same guy who later on masterminded the murder of Sheikh Mujib. he took those tanks to Sheikh Mujib's house, and his whole family, including Sheikh Mujib, was massacred. Okay, there was another thing. Since Sheikh Mujib was he was never ready to trust army, and it was a nightmare for him. So he also came up with another idea, with the idea of having an alternate force, Rakhi Bahini. Rakhi Bahini, which can be translated as a national security force, but in fact it was very much a private army, which he established for his protection and to minimize the role of military. I will quote the words of the author about Rakhi Bahini. The Rakhi Bahini, which roughly translated means National Security Force, was an elite paramilitary force whose members had to take oath of personal loyalty to Mujib. Despite its high-sounding name, it was a sort of private army. It was formed originally as an auxiliary force, a group of 8,000 hand-picked men from the old Mukti Bahini, to assist the police in maintenance of law and order. As opposition to Mujib increased, he found it a convenient alternative to the army. The Rakhi Bahini was raised to 25,000 men who were given basic military training, army-style uniform, steel helmets, and modern automatic weapons. It was freely used to crush opponents and critics of Mujib and the Awami League. In time, it completely terrorized the people. So, in short, the role of Rakhi Bahini was to protect Sheikh Mujib, to crush his opponents and the opponents of Awami League. Rakhi Bahini was involved in murder of several opponents. By the end of 1973, the politically motivated murders had crossed the line of 2000. There were several documented cases of murder and torture mentioned by the author in his book. Then author talks about the majors of Bangladesh army who were later involved in the murder of Sheikh Mujib. On top of list was Major Farooq. His father was also in army, and as a child he has lived in several cities with his father, including the cities in West Pakistan. Another was Major Ziaur Rahman, which later became General Ziaur Rahman and the President of Bangladesh, Khalid Musharraf. So now Major Ziaur Rahman and Khalid Musharraf both have worked as instructors in Pakistan Military Academy before the fall of Dhaka or before 1971, because they were commissioned in Pakistan Army by that time. And Major Abdul Rashid also served in different cities in West Pakistan. He has served in Northwestern Frontier Province, which is now called KPK, and his last post was at the line of control before he escaped to East Pakistan and took part in the liberation war of Bangladesh. Till 1974, the economic situation of country was getting worse. Sheikh Mujib admitted that 27,000 people have died due to starvation, and around 3 million people were living below the starvation line. Sheikh Mujib declared emergency. I would quote words of the author. On 28 December 1974, he proclaimed a state of emergency, suspending fundamental rights and completely stripping the courts of their power to intervene in any of his actions. Then he rammed through the assembly a series of far-reaching amendments to the constitution, which reduced the national parliament to an advisory status and legitimized his own grip on the absolute power. On another point, the author is saying, in less than a month, the National Assembly rubber-stamped the changes, 294 members voting in favor and none against. The captive press coursed its approval. The sycophants cheered. Sheikh Mujib described his action as the second revolution. He sworn in as president on 25th January 1975. In the short span of 3 years, the great parliamentarian had become the great dictator. So now what Sheikh Mujib was calling the second revolution was nothing but another round of failures, another round of exploitation. And it was exposed by his cabinet that all those old faces were again sitting in his cabinet. Just by changing ministries, they were given different ministries, but those were all the same people who earlier failed to deliver. Later another incident happened. It was a wedding ceremony where Ghazi Ghulam Mustafa, who was kind of city boss of Awami League, he was also there, and some military officers, including Shariful Haq Dalim was there. Shariful Haq Dalim and his wife, both of them were there. And on some point they argued with each other. The people who were there, according to author, Ghazi Ghulam Mustafa or his people, they insulted Mrs. Dalim, the wife of Shariful Haq Dalim. They started arguing and later they left the venue, but some other officers who came to help Shariful Haq Dalim, they took the army trucks, they took their people and they followed Ghazi Ghulam Mustafa, stormed his home. It came to the notice of Sheikh Mujib. Later, another issue was reported against those army officers. So this time, Sheikh Mujib instituted a military inquiry into the young officers' misconduct, whatever they did. As a result of the inquiry, 22 junior army officers were prematurely retired. They were dismissed. But then, as a gesture to the family, Mujib tried to make it up to Dalim by assisting him in securing up a business. So, okay, this thing happened. 22 officers were prematurely retired from the army. But then this thing created a kind of fuss in other army officers. I would quote the author, they felt betrayed not only by Sheikh Mujib but also by their seniors in the army. Whenever they went out with their families, they talked openly about their dissatisfaction. Now, at this point, again, the distance between the leadership, the political leadership of the country and the army officers, the distance was increasing from time to time because of all these incidents which were repeatedly happening. Another incident that happened that time, and it's mentioned by the author, is about Siraj Shikdar. Siraj was the leader of Maoist movement. He was arrested by police and he was kept in a police station near Chittagong. Later he was brought to Sheikh Mujib. Sheikh Mujib tried to win him over, but when he failed and Siraj did not compromise, then Sheikh Mujib gave orders to the police to deal with him. After those orders, Siraj was taken by police and he was shot dead on the way somewhere. And the official explanation given by police was that he was killed while he was trying to escape the police. But later on, it was found that he was shooted from the front side. He was shooted with the 6 bullets in his body. It was openly talked about in Dhaka that the Siraj Shikdar has been liquidated on Mujib's order. There are several other incidents mentioned by author where military was trying their best to control the law and order situation. Every time when they arrest someone, it turned out to be a politician or a big supporter of Awami League or some regional or district level chairman or boss of Awami League. It made them kind of disheartened, especially Farooq, Major Farooq. There are several incidents mentioned about him, that how he was feeling and how he was expressing his feelings about the country, about the political leaders and about the law and order situations. At one point he is saying that at the same time Farooq and the officers were being told to have no mercy on the opposition, particularly the Maoists and other leftists who got caught in the army's net. And I was given orders to beat them up, get information from them and then throw them in the river. Farooq, this is what Major Farooq talked with the author. This is all what he shared with the author. An author talks in particular about Farooq, Major Farooq, who was the mastermind of murder of Sheikh Mujib. He says that after these several incidents, Farooq is saying that it made me a rebel. After that, I was not interested in promotions, courses, career, or anything. I only thought about one thing: how this government should go. And in Bangladesh at that time, there was many others in the same fixation. There was a lot of quiet plotting going on all over, including those such as Mujib's political advisors and ministers. Everyone was fed up. They were all talking about ideologies, coups, counter coups, Marxism, communism. Farooq has already decided at some point that he would get rid of Sheikh Mujib by killing him. Farooq proceeded in a military manner. He was planning, he was identifying the targets. The target, of course, was Sheikh Mujib. And every single day he was planning about that. And he was trying to involve other people in it. Mujib used to live in his house. It's in Dhanmandi in Dhaka. I visited this house last year. It was a triple cordon security system in Sheikh Mujib's house. Outside was police, definitely armed, and then in the inner layer it was military. They were given the charge, and inside the house on the ground floor it was Sheikh Mujib's own security guards who were picked by Sheikh Mujib, and they were armed with Sten guns and other weapons. So this was the security system for Sheikh Mujib's protection. Later on, Farooq decided that he should also involve Major General Ziaur Rahman. He was Major General by that time. When he was Major and he was an instructor in Pakistan Military Academy, Kakul. Later on, he was the same person who announced the independence of Bangladesh in March 1971. And then he also formed the Z Force against Pakistan Army. After the creation of Bangladesh, the promotions were given quite rapidly to fill the space in the military for the top leadership. In author's word, General Ziaur Rahman, he was a full colonel in February 1972, brigadier in mid 1973, major general in October of the same year. So that's how rapidly he was given the promotion. He was already a major general in 1973. Now in Farooq's mind, he wanted General Ziaur Rahman to take over and take control of the country. He somehow managed to visit General Ziaur Rahman. He had a meeting with him and he expressed his feelings and then also the plan of killing Sheikh Mujib. After hearing everything from Farooq, he did not want to be the part of it, but he also did not take any action to save Sheikh Mujib or to take any action against Major Farooq and the others. Okay, then later on, Major Farooq and Rashid and others, they also approached Khankar Mushtaq Ahmed. He was a political leader. He was part of Awami League. So in some way, they were trying to involve some political leaders because they were just the ordinary junior officers. They were not in any position to lead the country. They were looking for a replacement of Sheikh Mujib. He was interviewed by the author Anthony Mascarenhas. In that interview, Farooq said that they are not doing anything for their personal benefit. They are doing for the benefit of the country and for the people. So that's why they want some replacement. Anyone who can replace Sheikh Mujib and bring change in the country. So they thought about Khankar Mushtaq Ahmed. It was a good replacement of Sheikh Mujib according to them. Author also says that US was aware of this planning, and it is also mentioned by another author, B.Z. Khosrow, in his book Bangladesh Military Coup and the CIA Link. I have talked about that book already. So that US was well aware of whatever was happening. They were not involved in the planning, but they knew everything. And again, Anthony is also saying the same thing, that according to the senior US officials at the American Embassy in Dhaka, And from well-informed Bengali sources, it appears that US had prior knowledge of the coup. Based on the author's research, according to Bangladesh military sources with intimate knowledge of the events, approaches were made to the Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Major General Ziaur Rahman. He was interested to change the government, but he was not interested to lead that military coup. And according to Farooq, also in his interview, General Zia said, okay, I cannot be part of it, but if you want to do it, go ahead. Now the plan was almost ready. Farooq and his team was very close in taking action against Sheikh Mujib. And it so happened that the commandant of the Rakhi Bahini, Brigadier Nur Zaman, he was out of the country on some visit to Europe. And his second in command was relatively junior officer who was acting independently for the first time. So it was also another thing which was quite against Sheikh Mujib. Sheikh Mujib, he was very well aware and he was very careful against about his opponents, and he also felt the danger from army, but his all intelligence and his focus was on the army commanders, not on junior officers, and that was his mistake which took his life. Before they can start this operation against Sheikh Mujib, they also involved some ex-military officers, Major Shariful Haq Dalim, Major Noor and Huda. Since Shariful Haq Dalim had already a bad experience with Sheikh Mujib and his government, so it was he joined. He was also very interested to kick him out of the government. Anyway, the day they started the operation, it was midnight or the morning of 15th August, and their task was to neutralize Rakhi Bahini. Their headquarters was in Dhaka, and it was 3,000 men there. Farooq and his team, they also took their tanks, and they sent 28 tanks to neutralize 3,000 men of Rakhi Bahini. The funny part is that the tanks doesn't have any ammunition. They just use them for the psychological effects on the Rakhi Bahini, because what he writes here is that few people really understands how effective the tank is as a psychological weapon. And on the other hand, they were also planning to enter Sheikh Mujib's house. Farooq's team reached there. According to author, the armed police guards posted on the perimeters outside the compound were taken completely by surprise and quietly submitted when they saw the heavily armed troops in black uniform. The lances sentries at the gate were not in the plot. They were not included in this plan. But when they saw their colleagues and some officers in black uniforms, they quietly stepped aside and allowed them to pass. As I said earlier, it was a 3-layer security system, and inside the house on the ground floor, it was Sheikh Mujib's own personal security team, and they were sleeping there. When they saw that something is happening outside, and they saw some strange men with guns, and they are entering through the gates, they grabbed their automatic machine guns and fired at them. Shamsul Islam, one of the artillery, was hit in his head and died on the spot. Another trooper, this one from the Lancers, was badly wounded. When they saw their people being killed by the security team of Sheikh Mujib, they also started firing. And since they also have the tanks, they started shelling on his house. When they have already killed the security team downstairs, they started searching the houses. Sheikh Mujib's older son Kamal and Jamal, they were also killed by the attackers. Mujib himself was quick to react. When Mujib heard the sounds of firing and all that, first of all he called the headquarters of Rakhi Bahini, but in the absence of their brigade commander Nur Zaman and Colonel Sabiyuddin, he could not get through any senior officer. Since Mujib couldn't contact Rakhi Bahini because they were also dealing with military because on the same time military also went to their headquarters with the tanks. So when Sheikh Mujib couldn't get in contact with Raki Bahini, then he called General Shafiullah, who was the chief of army staff, and also his military secretary, asking them to send help immediately. The last call was made to Colonel Jamil, director of the military intelligence. Now the military intelligence director, he suddenly got up and he rushed to help the president. He tried to reach there, but on the way he was stopped by the military officers. There was a sharp argument, and when he got out of his car, they shoot him dead. They were given the orders that they can go to any extent. And in the same way, when they planned Farouk and others, they gave the instructions to the whole team that their main target is Sheikh Mujib. But anything which comes in between, they have to eliminate. And that was the thing which led to the massacre in the end. Otherwise, it was not in their plan to massacre the entire family. Their main objective was to kill Sheikh Mujib. But later on, they end up killing each and everyone there, including the children. Mohyuddin Huda and Noor ran from room to room. They were looking for Mujib. Mohyuddin unexpectedly found him. He was going up to the first floor when he saw Sheikh Mujib standing not 20 feet above him. Mujib was wearing a white kurta and a grey checked lungi and carried a pipe in his hand, his favorite pipe. He started talking with him because he kind of demoralized and he was not mentally ready to kill Sheikh Mujib. Sheikh Mujib asked him, "What do you want?" And then they had some kind of conversation. Sheikh Mujib even said, "Pakistan army couldn't kill me, how can you guys kill me?" Actually, in all this conversation, Mujib was just trying to get more time, and he was buying time for army to reach and react. He was having conversation with the Mohyuddin. Noor arrived there and he fired a burst from his Sten gun. Mujib did not have a chance. The bullets tore a huge hole in his right side. His body twisted backwards with the impact. Then it slipped face down towards the bottom of the stairs. The pipe was still gripped tightly in the right hand. The time was 5:40 a.m. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's temperance love affair with the Bengalis had come to an end.